lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan, and today I'm going to be going through issue 1 of Adventures of the Mask, comic based on the animated series from the 90s. If you were a kid in the 90s, then you definitely know what this is, but this was the animated series based on the Jim Carrey movie, so definitely not the version of the Mask that you would normally expect from Dark Horse Comics. I recently picked this up again. I had it in my collection, couldn't find it, so I just decided to buy it again. I loved this cartoon as a kid. I had the toys. I loved the Jim Carrey movie, and then going back and realizing like, oh man, there's all these other Mask comics, but they're nothing like the Jim Carrey version. But amazing stories. John Arcudi and Doug Mankey did some great stuff. Have all those collections as well, but I wanted to show this off because I was just looking online and this jumped back out at me, and I just had to pick it back up, especially with like, look at this awesome Bruce Timm cover. So this was like it was very got Michael Eury, Neil Vokes, and Jay Geldhoff on the creative team. Clem Robbins, the letterer. It's just such a great idea to do this version because while the film version of The Mask was not really the same thing as the comic book version, it was smart to have a version that, a younger audience could jump into, because the other version is super violent, but this is more of like a Tex Avery violent humor, if you will. So I love this, and obviously like I can hear all the voices from the animated show and the film too when I'm reading it. So I just wanted to kind of show this off, and because it's not collected. I wish this stuff was collected, but you can only get it in single issues. And I think they capture the visual gags really well. And I think that humor in comic books can sometimes not read the same. But I think they did a very good job of this one. Even Mrs. Peenman coming in and yelling at him and like the hair blowing back. Like, it levels up what we saw in the movie and the show perfectly. And as always, we have him like contemplating, should he or shouldn't he use the mask? He's like, oh, it got me into trouble last time I wore it, but of course he's going to take it anyway. But, like for a lot of people, this is their version of the Mask. Like to have, I think most people still, I guess the Mask hasn't had a comic book in a while. I know that Chris Cantwell did a miniseries, but it was not the Stanley Ipkiss version. And Stanley Ipkiss is already like, he came and went very quick in the actual regular Mask series. So to kind of have this version, I think like I kind of wish they would revisit this. I think it's definitely, I think it's a 30th anniversary of that movie coming up in 94. I think that's when the first film came. So I think it'd be great to kind of revisit this version, maybe do a more realistic take on it, or even doing this kind of animated style would be fun too. But the writing in here is great. The art, I just love the visual gags for me are just so great and executed hilarious. Like the way his teeth and the eyes are popping out, and just visual gag after visual gag. And the only difference with the show, and I don't remember why they changed it, but like Cameron Diaz was the love interest in the film, but she's not in here and wasn't in the animated series. But Peggy is the reporter that kind of ratted him out. And so she was always, from what I remember in the animated show, she was basically the side character, like always kind of trying to like make her bones off of his antics and kind of pushing him to do stuff, and so she's like, she views him as a superhero, and you're supposed to capture crooks, not help them escape. He never doesn't consider himself a hero at all. And again, like, it's all about her. So basically just saying that he's her only hope of doing anything as a reporter and making it big. And, he's not feeling it. He's like, this is my life, man. All you care about is your headlines. Make a little quick comment about, Dorian, the mobster, the villain from the first film. But this is where the show takes, and the comic, it differs a lot with the main antagonist. We got Pretorius, which is like this weird, like, new arch enemy that we see Stanley, aka the Mask, fighting throughout the series. We got Lieutenant Kellaway. We got, Charlie, the bank manager, is still there. So we have, Matilda, the security guard that Stanley was kind of infatuated with in in the movie, and then also kind of carries over into the animated series as well. And nobody knows he's the Mask except Peggy. Obviously, Lieutenant Kellaway has his ideas, like he knows what's up, but he can't prove it. So Charlie, like, telling Stanley that he looks at him as a criminal, and Stanley doesn't view himself that way. He doesn't view himself as a hero, but he also doesn't feel that he's a criminal either. I love that. I can hear the way he would say Ipkiss. So that's what's funny too, is that some of these characters, Lieutenant Kellaway was a part of the actual regular comic continuity. He was a carryover into the film and into the show. While Praetorius is going to be the main villain, we are going to see another character that wasn't in the film, but is also a mainstay in the regular comic continuity, and that's Walter. This big, hulking beast of a man. And he comes right at Stanley as he's got his mask in the cement and has no way to get out. Just a fun comic. Cool to look back on this and see, how popular that the character became because of the Jim Carrey movie. And then in turn, you got an animated series, you had toys, you had animated comics, you have these kids books that are based, more on the regular version of the Mask. And then, I also picked up the next couple issues too. Just more great Bruce Timm covers. And it's so cool to see, because you don't see a lot of Bruce Timm stuff outside of like Batman related stuff, but these covers that he did, and they just pop off the page. Like, I would have loved to have seen, like, what would the animated series have looked like if Bruce Timm was involved in designing that stuff too. But just a fun comic. If you're a fan of The Mask, I definitely recommend, kind of seeking these out. Any books that Dark Horse has done with The Mask have always been great. But these are just fun kind of like time capsule into what we had in the 90s. Go pick them up. Super inexpensive to find. They're not that expensive. They're not that expensive to find, so if you can find them on the cheap, I highly recommend snatching them if you see them. While you're at it, make sure you follow us on social media. Our links are down below. Hit the bell icons and subscribe so you're notified every time a new vid comes out. And on that note, I'm out.